Here we go. Let's try that again. I realized my mic was off. Take two. This is the neat thing about going live. Welcome. Take two. Welcome to Women Winning Wednesdays. I am Elsa W. Smith, your Maryland estate planning attorney, and I'm the owner of the law offices of Elsa W. Smith, where our mission is to empower women through estate planning. You know, John D. Rockefeller was famous for saying, think of giving not as a duty, but as a privilege. Today, we're going to talk about all things planned giving, charitable giving, and I have a wonderful guest that's going to help me just educate myself and the public on all things charitable giving. Before we continue, I want you to make sure that StreamYard can actually see your comments because we want to hear from you. Go to StreamYard.com/Facebook. StreamYard.com/Facebook and give them permission for us to see your comments. Now, this platform, Women Winning Wednesdays, was created for me to present guests and educational content. And my hope is to provide you with glimpses of what an empowered woman is and what she needs to win. As a reminder, make sure to comment. Tell me where you're listening from. Put a heart, an emoji, or anything like that in the comments. And by the way, if you're catching this on the replay, put #replay in the comments so that we know that you heard it on the replay. My guest today, she is not only a friend, but she is a colleague and a respected member of the legal community. And I am so honored and proud to share her with you, with my audience today. Her name is Aquanetta Betts. Aquanetta is the Senior Executive Director of Planned Giving for World Vision, and that's a global humanitarian organization. Prior to joining World Vision, Aquanetta worked for 11 years as an estate planning attorney. She holds designations as an accredited estate planner and a chartered advisor in philanthropy. Aquanetta is a member of the National Bar Association, and within that entity, she is a member of the Women Lawyers Division, International Committee, and the Real Property Trusts and Estates section. She is also a member of the National Association of Charitable Gift Planners. And let's try that again. She's a member of the National Association of Charitable Gift Planners, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Task Force. There we go. And currently serves as the president of the Chesapeake Planned Giving Council. It is my pleasure to introduce to you Aquanetta Betts. Hi, Aquanetta. How are you?
Great, Elsa. Well, thank you so much for that introduction. It was wonderful. And yes, you are a friend. You are just a wonderful person to know and an asset to the entire community here.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you for giving me the heads up that I was off audio. That's a fun thing about going live. You know, you just got to pivot and roll with it. I'm really, really excited to have you on the show today because I want us to talk about something that just, for whatever reason, it's not resonating with families of color, people of color, as much as it should. If we're talking about building generational wealth and all those things that we're going to get into. But before we do that, I told the audience a bit about you. What else should they know about your role in World Vision, and how do you educate people on planned giving?
Great. Yeah, my role in World Vision, I work with a lot of our many longtime supporters, donor partners who've been with World Vision for decades and decades, and they love our work and the mission. And so I have the wonderful job of working with them to do their charitable giving, to make an impact. whether they are interested in clean water access, maternal child care help, if they are interested in girls and education around the globe. So very important issues, global poverty. And so we think here in the US, why would we be concerned about global poverty? It has an impact on all of us. So that's really the work that I do. I help great people make an impact through their giving.
Wonderful. Why is charitable giving not resonating as much as it should in communities of color? And the follow-up to that is it just the way the way that we're framing the issue? We're saying charitable giving as opposed to tithing or gifting. And
Yeah.
to the audience, before Aquanetta answers that question, if you give to your churches, whether it's a one-time gift or tithing, and if you give to your favorite charities or sororities and fraternities, I want you to put the number 1 in the comments. And remember to give StreamYard permission to see your comments. But if you give to any one of those entities that I mentioned, let us know in the comments. Aquanetta, please.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a fantastic point, Elsa, and I appreciate you setting it up that way. If I were to say you are a philanthropist, most people would go, who? Me? No way. Or if we were to say charitable giving, most people think, what are you talking about? That's really not me. We don't do that in our family. But as you mentioned, take a step back and look at what you give from your household. And for many of us, especially people of color, we know that many of our institutions, whether they are religious institutions, whether they are schools, universities, colleges, we give. And in actuality, there's data that shows that people of color, in particular, Blacks and African Americans, tend to give more of their income percentage wise than any other group. Very charitable as a group. But what we call it certainly makes a difference, Elsa. So if we do call it tithing, we all know what that means. And as a matter of fact, many households will say, you dare do nothing else before you take that top 10% and give that to your religious institution. And so, but we don't call it being philanthropic or charitable giving. We do not use those terms. So you're right. It makes it seem like it's for someone else, but we are doing that sort of giving and have been doing so for generations and generations.
So we're givers by nature, right?
Absolutely. Just think of our different communities, where you grew up, where I grew up. Think about our parents, our grandparents, our aunts and uncles. If someone in the neighborhood, in the community needed help, did we rally around in some way to assist? Whether it was someone in the family who needed assistance. And in many ways, families of color tend to continue that family giving, maybe oftentimes longer than we should to some family members, but that's being charitable in many ways. So where we actually put our emphasis on giving may be slightly different than others, but that giving spirit, that charitable nature, wanting to help has been there as a community, and it has been there for a long time. This is nothing new. I agree with you. The terminology may make people think this is not something that I do. I'm not philanthropic, but we certainly are giving.
Absolutely. Now, you had a very active estate planning practice, and then you transitioned to the arena of planned giving. Would you describe what that journey was like, and how has it changed your life?
Absolutely. So, Elsa, I know when we had a conversation a week or two ago, I didn't bring this up, but I thought about it when I was thinking about being here today. And I said, I want to mention that because I want folks to see more of the complete picture. So Elsa, you may know this, but I spent 15 years as a flight attendant for American Airlines. And during that 15 years, it was fantastic. It was wonderful. I saw many different places, met many different people. But the gist of that job revolved around people. It was the service industry. So then I worked through undergrad with that job and some of law school with that position. Then I became an estate planning attorney. So again, that's a service, a professional service. Clients, passengers, there are some similarities. So I did the estate planning for about 11 years. Absolutely loved working with folks, with families to help them work through what they would like to see happen, their goals, their wishes, their dreams for their children, their grandchildren, nieces, nephews, for their organizations, whether it's a church or a sorority, fraternity. I love working through that process with them. I like seeing their faces when many of them would sit there in front of me and they'd have like the aha moment that they could actually put something in their documents to help their child or their children or their spouse. And it was their way of saying, I want to make sure I help them. I want to leave them a roadmap. And they would actually sit there and I can see in their faces when they would get that. So the estate planning was wonderful service again. And then I found out about this industry, fundraising and plan giving. And I fell in love with it. And I still love what I do today. And I've been doing the plan giving solely for about 3.5 years for an organization, World Vision. And I get the chance to work with donors and supporters. And it's just a wonderful marriage of the estate planning background. And again, I'm working with people. So there is my tie-in, the flight attendant, the estate planning attorney, and now plan giving. I work with people, relationships. So that has been key for me.
And I love that. And it's like a natural tie-in because there's an art to serving the public. And one really, I believe, has to have a heart of service when we're talking about working with the public. At least that's my philosophy. And it sounds like your philosophy as well. Within the planned giving space, there really is, from what I've seen, just a lack of diversity. Talk to us a little bit about that, how, if you see any changes in the industry, or any trends to try to improve that at all?
Sure, absolutely. Yes, there is a lack of diversity. So within fundraising, we have different types of fundraisers. So there are fundraisers that many of us are familiar with. We'll get the calls or the letters, and there's someone who signed their name there. Most likely, those are going to be your frontline gift officers. They're really working towards more of the outright giving, whether you write a check, you go online and make a gift. That's really your frontline fundraiser. When you get into plan giving, you get into more of a narrow niche of fundraising, because we're dealing more with gifts that take a little more time to plan and think through. So that really requires, in many instances, either that love for dealing with different types of gift, more complex giving, and also it requires a skill set that many people will say, oh, I don't even want to talk about those things. Whereas over the years, it has been dominated by white men in particular. But that's just the nature of fundraising. It's still not a very diverse field all around. So plan giving gets even smaller with diversity. So I've been active with the National Association of Charitable Gift Planners with their Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Task Force. And so the work is being done to try and address the lack of diversity. And progress is being made, certainly slow going, as many of these diversity efforts can be. There's a lot to it, many different moving parts going on. But I am hopeful. I do see, even within the last 3 or 4 years, more people from different backgrounds interested in a career in plan giving. And some people may even ask, what is plan giving? So I summed it up a little bit. It's more of the complex types of gifts that can include real estate, You can make gifts of real estate to charities. It may include someone looking at how do I give through my trust for years. So a little bit more in the planning stages, but that sums up pretty much what plan giving is. But diversity, there are efforts being made, and I will say there's progress.
Yeah, and it listening to you brought to mind, clients, potential clients that I've spoken to who are interested in making, legacy gifts, gifts that just go on for more than one generation to, sororities and fraternities. They want to leave a set amount that perhaps can be used for scholarships or whatnot, and it's placed into some sort of like an investment account for the charity to or organization to use. And I found that a lot of and I say in our community, our efforts are kind of like one-offs.
Mhm.
We write a one-time check because there's some drive or some, effort going on for raising money for scholarships, but we're not on the whole, I'm generalizing, strategic about how we give and how to not only benefit the organization or the entity, but looking at our financial situation and seeing how that gift can be used to our advantage from a financial standpoint. Would you agree?
Yes, absolutely. So the whole giving piece, like I mentioned before,
Mhm.
we give as a people, as a group. We certainly are generous. That is not the issue. What tends to be lacking is the actual strategy behind it, the process, putting something in writing for that legacy giving piece. We know we are fond of our religious organizations. They go back for many of us for generations in our families. We want to continue giving to them. We give during our lifetime. We don't want that to stop necessarily upon our deaths, but we do not follow through with any sort of documentation.
Mhm.
So it's not in our will to give to that church or your sorority or your fraternity. Should it be? Most likely, most people still want to make a gift, an impact as part of their legacy. So it tends to stop. And that is really where you, Elsa, and the work that you are doing will actually work with your clients, the community, to say charitable giving should be a part of your legacy plans, not just stop that one off, that check for homecoming at your university. It continues. And making your legacy a part of that is really important. And for these institutions to be sustainable, we need legacy gifts. They're often our largest gifts. The data shows most people are able to give more
Mhm.
as part of their legacy plan because they no longer need those assets. And
Yeah.
so,
I'm sorry.
go,
No,
go
no, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
ahead. Yeah. And so I will say this. Now, I know we've shared a bit about some of the research. There's some research out there. Dr. Russell James from Texas Tech, he's done some really scholarly papers about African Americans and their giving. And I did not even realize that existed. And I reached out to him and asked if he had any data on giving and for African Americans. He said, yeah, I do. I was really pleasantly surprised. But what that data showed was what we just mentioned. It tends to stop after a lifetime because there's no documentation, there's no plan there. And so there are some beneficial parts to giving also. And I know we will touch on a bit about the tax benefits in many cases for folks. And Elsa, please feel free if you had a question. I want to get that
I
answered.
did, and I am gonna ask you about that in just a second. But I love this conversation because things are happening like organically, and even
Yeah.
though I have questions I want to ask you, there's something else too. I found, and I addressed this just recently in an article that I published, was the fact that some estate planners are not intentional about asking people of color, their clients of color or potential clients of color, to consider charitable giving. It doesn't even come up in intake in the conversation. And my point was that, if you want to see changes, you have to eliminate unconscious biases. Don't assume that people of color don't have the assets or resources to create these legacy gifts. But it really requires a change in mindset, not just from the estate planner's standpoint, but also the donor. And once I believe that seed is planted, they can have that aha moment, like, oh, I never thought I could do X. Well, that's why we're there to plant those seeds.
Absolutely. Yeah. When you're mentioning this, it brings to mind the story of a woman. I believe she was in Mississippi, and she probably lived to be in her, I want to say either 70s or 80s, maybe even longer than that before she passed away. But she worked as a housekeeper most of her life, working for families there in her area. She did not have much of an education. I'm not sure she even made it to like the 4th grade, maybe. But what she did was, during this hard work she was doing, she saved a lot. And she managed to actually make a 6-figure gift to one of the universities there. I believe it was Mississippi.
Wow.
Yes. And this was one of the largest gifts they'd actually received from an African American. She had never attended even high school, but she made a gift to that university for students of color, if I remember her story correctly. Yes. And it was significant because she'd never earned much. By the way, what we would consider a high income person, she was not that. So when I hear stories of that, I know that many of us, we have the ability, we need to follow through on that legacy piece for our giving.
Wow. Yeah, that gave me chills. That the fact that, it was just from her heart. And it just underscores what we've been talking about, that we as a community, we give. Absolutely. We just need to empower those gifts to work beyond that one generation. And that, I believe, is a key to building that multi-generational wealth that we're striving for. And this ties into my next question: how can we incorporate planned giving into a comprehensive estate plan? And logistically, how would that work?
Yeah, just as you mentioned, and there are many different ways to incorporate your gift ideas. And that's how I approach it, actually. And the terminology, again, makes a difference. And in the work that you're doing with your clients, even terminology, if we say charitable giving, it may not resonate as the same as, what if some of your legacy ideas? What if some of your gift planning ideas?
There we go. The word gift.
Yes, exactly. So it makes a difference. And usually people will say, oh, yeah, I never really thought of that way of giving. So I would approach it that way, having that conversation, because a lot of people, they do not realize you can certainly make those plans. There are many different ways to approach it. Of course, through your estate plan, your will, you can put it in there, obviously, make certain gifts right out to those organizations upon something happening, your passing, or a trust can be set up if that's part of your plan. Also, there are different items. There's a donor advised fund.
And now explain it to us, because we may not know what a donor advised fund is.
Yep. A donor advised fund, it's a way of giving. It is, I would consider it, to sum it up, we call it a checkbook for giving. And you're saying, well, what's so different about this checkbook? The donor advised fund, and they are usually held by different organizations. Your financial institutions will usually have a branch of their organization that will host or be a sponsoring organization for donor advised funds. Fidelity, Schwab, Vanguard. We do offer them at World Vision as well. Different charities will offer them. You can make a contribution to a donor advised fund. And let's say in the year 2021, you make your contribution. You get that tax credit that very year. Then you can decide how you'd like to make those grants from your donor advised fund. Those grants can be made out to different charities. You name it, various charities, 501c3s. You can have it to go out to your church. You can have it to go sororities, fraternities, whatever organizations you want, but you don't have to make those gifts right away. So you make your gift, your contribution in 2021, and then you can determine what's next. Do I give to them this year or do I give to them next year? Whatever your giving strategy is, but you've gotten that tax deduction for that initial gift in 2021. Nice. Then next year, if you have extra funds you'd like to put aside for your giving, you can make another contribution. You can actually fund your donor advised fund with gifts of stock and gifts of real estate. If you have a property that you no longer really use anymore, it's a tax issue. You're paying taxes on it, you're paying insurance on it, but you don't really use it. It was somebody's parents' house or something, and you can actually gift that property or even a portion of the value to charity and to fund a donor advised fund. So there are a lot of things to charitable giving, a lot more I could share, but just to give you that donor advised fund piece, and I threw that out there because I want you, if you're curious about it, take a look at it, look it up. There's enough information online to at least give you a general idea of what a donor advised fund is. So there are a lot of ways you can include even a donor advised fund into your estate plan. There's a component there as well.
I love that. And thank you. Thank you so much for that. We're nearing the top of the hour, but I would be remiss if I didn't ask you about the organization that you support, World Vision, and how does World Vision actually help people?
Yes, World Vision has been around for over 70 years now. Mm-hmm. And initially got its start with child sponsorships. So sponsoring children, usually a monthly amount, and the children are allowed to attend schools in their communities, school fees, school uniforms, that sort of thing that's covered. And these children are actually given a chance to reach their full potential. And we're talking children around the globe. We also have an emphasis on clean water access. So we provide the drilling for water points or wells in communities that lack clean water. And without the clean water access, children are usually the ones that really get the brunt of this suffering. Illnesses that we don't even see here in the US exist in these places because of the lack of clean water. A lot of actual medical facilities do not have access to clean water. So if you can imagine that, having a facility and you're there for childbirth and there's no clean water access. So we do a lot of that work, helping the most vulnerable around the world, geared to around children, of course. And we do a lot of great projects and programs. And so for more information on World Vision, worldvision.org. And also, if you are interested, I would love to chat. If you have questions for me, I can be reached obviously through Elsa has put up the link there for LinkedIn at Aquanetta Betts, and you can find me there.
I love that. You've actually traveled abroad and you've gotten to see some of the work that World Vision does. I mean, how does that change you from just as a human being? How does that change you to see that what you're doing is having that kind of an impact?
Yeah, I will certainly say, and I know we talked a bit about the estate planning and the whole estate administration piece, and that was challenging work, the estate administration piece with some of the family dynamics. But the work that we do, in particular around the globe, I visited in 2018 to Zambia, and seeing the faces of the children who did not have clean water access, seeing a 2-year-old who was tired, lethargic, not running around, a 2-year-old, not jumping around. And then going to a village where they did have clean water access and the children were thriving. So to see that with my very own eyes,
wow.
I sleep better at night knowing that the work that I'm doing will actually have an impact on those children.
That's beautiful. Wow. And I just wanted you to share that because I know that World Vision does such great work abroad, all over the world. Couple nuggets I wanted you to share with us. A few of the tax benefits of planned giving. I know we're shifting gears here, but I wanted to make sure we talked about this before we wrap up the session.
Absolutely. I'll give you three things, and I jotted them down so that I would not forget them. And also, disclaimer here, make sure you talk to your advisors about your personal situation. But I will give you these three items to take a look at, check them out, ask your advisors. The CARES Act. We all have heard the CARES Act in many different ways since the pandemic started. But there are some charitable giving provisions in that CARES Act. Look them up. There's one item about your adjusted gross income if you make cash gifts to charity. There could be a really good benefit there for cash giving to charity. There's also another item regarding folks who do not itemize on their taxes. So take a look at the CARES Act and the charitable giving provisions. There's some there. Just make sure you take a look so you'll at least know they exist. The other item, of course, I mentioned was a donor advised fund. And if you have questions about that, there's information online as well. And we do offer those through World Vision as well. The last one I'll mention, if you or someone you know, they have an IRA and they're approaching that 71, 72 years of age, there's some information there that they should know about the required minimum distribution. They can actually use that required minimum distribution and make gifts directly from that financial institution to their charity of choice, and it will not be a taxable event to them.
That's important.
Yeah.
I like that one.
Yeah. So if you or your parents, grandparents, whoever it is, if someone's approaching that 71, 72, they need to know about that gift to charity from that financial institution of their required minimum distribution from the IRA. There could be some benefits to give directly to that charity. So 3 items, and I thought those were some of the most important for us to share here.
Thank you. And again, to learn more about World Vision, it's worldvision.org.
Yes,
okay. I'm going to put that in the chat, worldvision.org. Ladies and gentlemen, Aquanetta Betts. It's been such a pleasure to have you on the show and to have you educate us on these concepts of really what we're talking about, making gifts. If we're just breaking it down, breaking down charitable giving, it's just gift giving, what we do regularly on an annual basis. And we talked about being strategic, being smarter about the impact that our money and our assets can have for our families and for organizations that we care about. I'm going to put your information one last time on the screen. Folks, please reach out to Aquanetta Betts if you have any questions about planned giving, charitable giving. She is on LinkedIn, and also her organization, it's worldvision.org. Again, worldvision.org. Aquanetta, it's been a real pleasure. Thank you so much, and I will talk to you soon.
Great. Thank you so much. It's been wonderful.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Everyone, Aquanetta Betts was our guest today, and we started off the show talking about, or I mentioned the Rockefeller quote, and I'm going to repeat it. It's to think of giving not as a duty, but as a privilege. And I want you to keep that quote in your minds and in your hearts as you think about creating an estate planning strategy, as you think about, how to take care of your family, how to give to the organizations that mean something to you. And that honestly, that have helped you. Because at some point in all of our lives, we've all been given some help from a person or an organization. So planned giving is just one of many ways that you can give back. And if you have questions and want assistance with creating a comprehensive estate planning strategy, I invite you to contact me at the law offices of Elsa W. Smith. I'm going to put my contact information on the screen. You can reach us at 410-995-7719. You can also visit us online. We're all over social media at Elsa W. Smith Law, and of course our website at elsawsmithlaw.com. 410-995-7719. I am Elsa W. Smith, your Maryland estate planning attorney, saying thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Women Winning Wednesdays. I'll speak to you next week. Take care. Be well.